look like Beethoven in this? Probably not.
Welcome all to another episode of Raphael Complains. On today's episode, I'll be complaining about classical music. Okay, I know most of you aren't interested in classical music, which is fine, but today I'm not going to be talking about classical music theory or classical music compositions or classical music composers. No. Today I'm going to discuss the issues in classical music, especially those that pertain to the career experience, since I've felt like the events of this year have really changed the classical music industry as a whole. Classical music is, simply put, music by dead people. The majority of classical music composers have been under 6 feet for centuries and centuries more to come. Of course, there are classical music composers today. However, the classical music that they compose is significantly different from the classical music you may be thinking of. One way to think about this is to compare the differences between the Mona Lisa and the Old Guitarist. Both are paintings, of course, but they are paintings from different periods, eras, and art styles. They're different paintings. But for the most part, as classical musicians, we just play music by dead people. The first issue that I'm going to be talking about has something to do with the job market. The job market works a bit like this. Do correct me if I'm wrong. If there's enough supply and enough demand for a certain profession, then those who have that profession are likely to get hired, or are likely to get jobs. If that demand is bigger, then those who have that profession are even more likely to get a job. But in the case of the classical music industry, the supply is too big and the demand is small, which can lead to increased unemployment number in the classical music industry. The problem with the classical music industry right now is that there's too many musicians out there, and there's just not enough jobs to accommodate these musicians. For those who are lucky enough to get a job, sometimes the paycheck isn't even that profitable. Why is the demand so low, you might ask? Because the general lack of interest in classical music. Not that many people are interested in classical music, and for those who are interested, who are very devoted to classical music, they have set the standards very high, making it difficult for new musicians to get a job. Classical music is notorious, among many other things, for being perfectionist. The demand for perfection is very high, whether or not you're a soloist performing alone in front of the orchestra, in front of the stage, or as an ensemble player performing along with the orchestra. So what happens when you make a mistake as a world-famous musician? For that, we're going to take a look at the case of Lee Yundi. Lee is a very talented and very famous pianist. He won the first prize of the International Frédéric Chopin Piano Competition at the age of 18, the youngest ever to do so. Unfortunately for him, in 2015, during one of his concerts in Seoul, he slipped up. He couldn't get back with the orchestra. He made a mistake. Soon he became the center of unwanted attention as the media and other musicians called out his mistake, citing it as inexcusable or inappropriate for a musician of his caliber. Of course, the expectations for Lee are already pretty high since he's a world-class musician. But still, this expectation extends way down the hierarchy towards those who are just ensemble players as well. Not all musicians have the same job market, of course. For example, violinists are more likely to get hired because orchestras need a lot of violinists, and violinists often work long-term with an orchestra. While pianists, on the other hand, have an even harder time trying to get a job, since pianists often work alone, and orchestras generally don't hire a fixed pianist, a permanent pianist. To avoid this video getting incorrectly flagged or demonetized, let's play a bit of a word game here. Whenever I say bubonic plague, in reality I'm talking about this thing down here, okay? Got that? The second issue that I want to be talking about is the impact of the bubonic plague for classical musicians. As soon as the bubonic plague was declared a pandemic, many classical musicians worldwide began to worry about their livelihoods. Concert avenues and public gatherings were closed. Concert tours were in danger, many of them already cancelled way before the pandemic was declared. As a result, many classical musicians lost thousands and thousands of dollars. Some concert avenues and classical orchestras are starting to turn towards online streaming, such as this one. However, these are not as profitable as normal concerts since there's not many people that would willingly donate to them. Both of these issues have a common denominator, and that is the public's general lack of interest in classical music. A lot of people seem to think that classical music is this piece of art that's old, irrelevant, and that it belongs in a museum, just like a Roman sculpture or something like that. However, with the advent of social media, a lot of creators have taken it upon themselves to help repopularize classical music. These include Two-Set, a violin duo from Australia who makes videos about classical music and especially the violin in their YouTube channel, and Raphael, a professional violinist who makes comedy sketches about the violin and classical music in his YouTube channel. If there were more people interested in classical music, I think it would be easier as a classical musician to survive in the industry, as there's enough demand to keep the industry just thriving. In the future, I really hope to see more creators like Two-Set or Raphael help popularize classical music again. That's going to do it for my video. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching.